Hello, Jay here from App Music Tutorials, and welcome to the 6th Roland Zenbeats tutorial. In this lesson, you'll learn how to record your loop performances in real time using the record to timeline and record performance recording modes. If you want to follow along, I suggest you watch the loop builder video to create the loops we'll use in today's lesson. To go there immediately, just click on the card that should be appearing right about now. Of course, if you prefer, you may always use your own loops to follow along. If you enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more quality tutorials, please consider subscribing. With that out of the way, let's get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started by opening up our song. And here we can see there's the App Music Hip Hop song. And let's go ahead and open that up. And this is kind of where we left off from the last tutorial. And remember, we had learned how to copy loops from the loop builder area and then take those over to the timeline where we actually were able to assemble our song. Kind of a cool thing. Now here's where we're going to have to make a decision. If you care about losing this data, because I am going to clear out this information here, I'm going to clear all of the audio out of these tracks and all the MIDI data out of the tracks to get a fresh, clean slate. Now, if you don't want to lose your data, then I highly recommend you go over to the hamburger and go to song and then save song as, and maybe give this maybe a tag or something like a V2 or something on it. And I'll save that. And that way you've got the original song. So I am going to clear all of this musical data out of here, and I'm just going to tap and hold and drag across so that I have all of the information on the screen. All of these are selected. Now I go to the single available cog and I tap and choose delete, and it'll clear everything out. Also, just make sure that your playhead is set to 0. Just hit the stop button. Should bring it back to 0 if it's not already. And let's go to the loop builder area and let's just save our changes thus far. There are some really cool hidden functions in the record button, and we're going to explore a couple of them right now. If you long press on the record button, you're going to get a record menu. Record input is what we get naturally when we tap the record button, and it's going to start recording. Record automation is if we wanted to record a routine that allowed us to pan back and forth between speakers, and automation that allowed us to do that. So we can record automation without actually affecting the musical performance. We can also record to timeline. We can basically record our loops to the timeline. So we can do a performance. We can tap on the various cells and start and stop and switch between the various loops, and then that recorded data will go to the timeline. And that's record the timeline. The last one here, record performance, that does not go to the timeline. What happens is your performance, once you're done, you can save the performance off as a 2-track file, either WAV, OGG, or FLAC. So it's different. There's not going to be like any evidence of that performance anywhere else except in this file that's created after your performance. So you're going to see the differences here in just a moment. So first, let's select record to timeline. And then you might notice that the actual timeline ruler popped down. And what that does is you'll kind of see how many measures are progressing as we change our patterns and change things up here. Now, generally speaking, I like to turn on the option to play through the various tracks, because how this works is that each lane has its own master, and so the master allows you to play all of the different loops in that lane. Similarly, if I go over to lane B, if I choose play, it's going to play all of the different loops in that lane. So we can play back our loops that way, or we can, of course, independently turn on and turn off various loops as we progress through time. And in this situation, as we record, that recorded data is going to the timeline. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to start off with the Electro Composer. And you can see the data is recording to the timeline because of the little lines that we can see, and that indicates that we're recording the 2-track information to a performance in the timeline. And you just shift between the cells. And I'll click stop. And now, if we go to the actual timeline, we're going to see the performance. And let me go ahead and make things a bit smaller so we can see everything a bit better. All right, so there, and let me just tuck these in. So there's the performance that we actually did within the last few moments. And if we want to play it back to hear it, and you can see like where one drum beat, you know, how far it's going, how many measures it's going, and then when it stops, and we can see when the other drum parts are kicking in, how they're progressing through it, and because they're color-coded, right? So we can kind of tell which loops are being used where. So it's kind of interesting. That's why you do see the different color variations, is because of the color coding involved in the actual loop builder view. So that's pretty cool. And if you're happy with the performance, awesome. Then you would do what we learned to do last time, and we can either render this out by going song, export song, and we can render it out either as a WAV file or a FLAC or an OGG file. And we can render it in either real time, if you appreciate that, or we can just leave that off and just create the mix. Now, we can't create a mix if we have another mix with the same name. So that's why this is grayed out, the little create mix button. So if that happens to you, all you really have to do is just modify the name. So green means go. Once we get our song name input and it's not a duplicate, and then we can go down and create the mix. And again, I'm not relying on the real-time render, so this will render much more quickly. I'm going to put this in my audio share files and save that. And the mix was created successfully. If I want to take a look, I'll click yes. And here it is. So that's how we can actually record our performance to the timeline. Now another way, and I'm just going to go back and I'm going to, again, do a press drag across all the different elements and click on the singular cog or tap on the singular cog and choose delete to clear everything out. And then we're going to take a trip back into the loop builder and make things just a tad bigger. There we go. So the other option here, and again we have to long press the record button, is record performance. So record performance, we don't have that luxury of going back to the timeline and manipulating the data once it's been recorded. Record performance is truly a real-time capture of your performance, and you can't go back and modify it. So if you want that particular way of recording your performances, then this will work out perfectly for you to record performance. So let's take a look at how this works. And it's very similar, except there's no capture to the timeline. Okay, so let's choose record performance, and again the shape of the icon for the record button kind of changes. Now we can go ahead and start up our build. So I'm just going to start with flying. Let me stop the recording. I'm not going to save that performance. Let's say I was like, I wasn't really feeling that, so I kind of canceled the recording. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to show you something that you might find interesting. All of these different loops here, of course, they're looping through their playback. And that's a natural thing about loops. They just, keep recycling. But I can actually modify that behavior. And the way that I would do that, let's say I want to only play this flying drum beat through one progression, and that's it. Okay, I don't want it to keep recycling. I want it to just stop on its own. I don't want to have to select anything else. It just stops. It finishes out its progression, then ends. So to do that, we can actually turn off the looping property by double tapping. And then there's this little 4-square option in the upper left. Let's go ahead and tap that. And now just switch off the looping. And then we'll go ahead and close this window. And now when we get back here, let's just test out the theory. And I'm just going to play back. So as you see, it's not recycling anymore. And again, that's just the property we can switch on or switch off. Let's go ahead and record the performance. And let me just take a quick peek at the timeline. Nope, nothing's there as expected. Let me jump back to Loop Builder, and we're going to, again, long press on the record button, choose record performance, and then let's go ahead and start the performance. So I'm going to save that. Of course, once we stop the playback, it's going to ask us to give this a name. And I'm going to leave this as is. I don't think I have any other files out there with that name. And when I click OK, now it wants to know where to save this. So again, I'm going to put this in my audio share files directory and click save. And now that's where I'm going to have to go later to find that file, because again, it's not going to be something that's recorded to the timeline. So we've just seen a couple of different methods for actually recording our performances. One way is to record our performances from the loop builder area to the timeline, and another one is to record our performance to simply a 2-track audio file in real time. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you learned something, and I'll see you next time. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more quality tutorials, consider clicking the subscribe button. Thanks again.